Welcome back, folks, to another Sasquatch Sunday here on Broadcasting Seeds. I'm your host, Bennett Tanton, and as always, I'm here to plant some new thoughts in your mind, seeds, if you will, about things that just might challenge everything you thought you knew. Now, if you've been with me before, you know we don't shy away from the weird, the wild, or the downright strange. Whether it's cryptids, conspiracies, or cover-ups, we dive into the mysteries that haunt the edges of our understanding and explore their impact on you, me, and society as a whole. So grab your hiking boots and maybe even a pair of binoculars, because today we're heading to the rugged wilderness of Colorado. That's right. We're diving deep into one of the most active Sasquatch sighting areas in the country. But that's not all. Colorado's Sasquatch legend is just the tip of the iceberg. There's folklore about other cryptids, hidden truths about this vast wilderness, and some mind-bending questions about what might really be lurking in the Rockies. By the end of this episode, you just might start seeing those snow-covered peaks in a whole new light. But hey, don't take my word for it. Stick around as we uncover the strange, the biblical, the conspiratorial, and the unexplained. And of course, we'll ask the big questions. What does it mean for us if Sasquatch is real? What else are we not being told? Buckle up, friends. It's going to be a wild ride through one of the most mysterious states in the U.S. All right. Let's get into it. This is Broadcasting Seeds, and you're listening to Sasquatch Sunday. Let's start by painting a picture. Imagine the vast wilderness of Colorado, jagged mountain peaks, dense forests, roaring rivers, and secluded valleys that stretch for miles. It's the kind of place that makes you realize just how small you are, how wild the world still can be. And in a landscape like that, who knows what could be out there, lurking just beyond the trail. Now, Colorado isn't just a playground for outdoor enthusiasts, it's also a hotspot for Sasquatch sightings. Over the years, there have been hundreds of reports from locals, hikers, and even seasoned hunters who've claimed to see something big. From Pike National Forest to the San Juan Mountains, there are stories of strange, ape-like creatures, distant howls in the night, and footprints that are too big and too human to belong to anything normal. But why Colorado? What makes this state such a prime location for Sasquatch? Let's break it down. First off, the sheer size of the wilderness areas in Colorado is staggering. There are millions of acres of forested land, much of it remote and untouched by human development. We're talking about areas where a creature like Sasquatch could easily avoid detection, thick with vegetation, rugged terrain, and plenty of places to hide. And if you're something like a Sasquatch, you'd want to stay hidden, right? What's more, Colorado's climate and geography offer a variety of ecosystems, from alpine tundra to dense forests, all providing rich resources for a large, omnivorous creature. There's plenty of water, food, and shelter in these regions. Everything a cryptid could need to survive. Now, some of you might be thinking, Bennett, come on. If something that big lived out there, wouldn't we have found it by now? It's a fair point, but let's remember, folks, Colorado is home to massive mountain ranges, some of the toughest terrain in the country. There are parts of these mountains that even experienced hikers rarely set foot in, much less biologists or researchers. Think about how many species we've discovered in just the past decade that we had no idea existed. Creatures tucked away in caves, forests, and jungles. So, is it really that far-fetched to think a large, intelligent, and elusive creature like Sasquatch could be hiding out there? It's food for thought. All right, let's move on to something else. Because while Sasquatch might be the star of the show here, Colorado has more than one cryptid legend lurking in the shadows. Let's talk about the Augerino. Now, while Sasquatch might grab the headlines, it's not the only cryptid that Colorado has to offer. Enter the Augerino, an underground legend that's been whispered about in the Colorado wilderness for generations. This cryptid might not be as widely known, but it has its own chilling tales woven into the folklore of the region. So, what is the Augerino exactly? Well, according to stories passed down through lumberjack camps and ranching communities, the Augerino is a subterranean creature that inhabits the drier, more remote regions of Colorado. It's described as snake-like, but far more terrifying, something akin to a giant worm or burrowing creature. If that sounds like something straight out of a horror movie, well, you're not far off. Legend has it that the Augerino digs deep tunnels under the earth, often destabilizing the ground above and causing strange sinkholes to appear without warning. Ranchers have claimed that it's responsible for the mysterious disappearance of livestock, and some say that the Augerino is so large it can create massive underground caverns as it burrows through the earth. It's like a living earthquake, only more selective and far more sinister. Now, I know what you're thinking. Bennett, are we really talking about a giant underground worm in the mountains of Colorado? Yep, we sure are. And while the Augerino may not have the same star power as Sasquatch, it holds a special place in Colorado's cryptid lore. Some even speculate that the Augerino, much like Sasquatch, is a relic of a time long past, some kind of prehistoric creature that survived by hiding away from human eyes. Others think it's a bit more supernatural in origin, possibly a creature tied to Native American legends of earth spirits or creatures that dwell beneath the surface. But here's the kicker. Whether or not you believe in the Augerino, there are enough strange occurrences in those remote areas of Colorado to make you wonder. The sudden appearance of massive sinkholes, strange rumbling noises from beneath the earth, and even bizarre patterns in the way wildlife behaves. Could it just be coincidence? Maybe. But when you start stacking all these oddities together, it does raise an eyebrow or two. And like Sasquatch, the Augerino's sightings, though rare, are consistent enough to keep the legend alive. Some have even drawn comparisons to other cryptids around the world, like the Mongolian death worm, a legendary creature from the Gobi Desert that shares some pretty eerie similarities to our underground friend here in Colorado. Could these creatures be related? Or are we just seeing different forms of the same myth, adapted to different cultures? Regardless of what the truth is, the Augerino adds yet another layer to Colorado's rich tapestry of cryptid lore. It's a reminder that in the wilderness, sometimes what you can't see is even more terrifying than what you can. And who knows? Maybe the Augerino and Sasquatch are out there right now, sharing the same turf, avoiding human eyes and keeping us guessing. But we're just getting started, folks. Up next, let's talk about the intersection between these cryptids and the potential government cover-ups that might be keeping us in the dark. Because if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that when it comes to the unknown, someone's always watching. All right, let's shift gears for a moment. We've talked about the creatures, the Sasquatch, the Augerino, but now let's explore something a little more, shall we say, shadowy. Because when it comes to cryptids, especially ones as well known as Sasquatch, it's not just the sightings that raise eyebrows, it's the strange silence that follows. The question we have to ask ourselves is, why aren't we hearing more about these creatures from official sources? Why, despite decades of reported encounters, is Sasquatch still relegated to the fringes of mainstream science? Well, one theory that seems to come up time and time again is that there's a concerted effort by the government, or at least certain parts of it, to keep the truth hidden. Now, I know some of you might be rolling your eyes at the thought of a government cover-up, but let's not forget, we've seen this play out before in other areas. Just look at the history of UFO sightings. How long did the government deny the existence of flying saucers and strange phenomena in the skies? Decades. And now, slowly but surely, information is trickling out that, hey, maybe those crazy conspiracy theorists weren't so crazy after all. So why wouldn't the same logic apply to Sasquatch and other cryptids? Think about it. If a creature like Sasquatch was proven to exist, it would shake the foundations of several scientific fields: biology, anthropology, even history. Suddenly, we'd have to acknowledge the possibility that we don't know nearly as much about the natural world as we thought. And that's just scratching the surface. What if these creatures aren't just some relics of the past, but something more? What if they're tied to government experiments, secret military projects, or, dare I say, the kind of biblical and supernatural phenomena that certain agencies would rather keep under wraps? Let me take you back to some of the most remote areas where Sasquatch sightings are reported. These locations, like Colorado's vast forests, aren't just popular hiking spots. They're often adjacent to, or even within, restricted areas owned by the government. Think about it. Military training grounds, national parks with restricted access, and vast stretches of wilderness that no civilian is allowed to enter. What if some of these places are off limits for a reason? Not because they're protecting nature, but because they're protecting secrets. And here's where it gets even weirder. In some of these areas, not only are Sasquatch sightings reported, but there are also stories of unmarked black helicopters, strange military activity, and, get this, disappearances. People going missing in national parks, never to be seen again. Could this be tied to the government's desire to keep certain things hidden? Or could it be something even more sinister? Some investigators have linked these disappearances to what's called the missing 411 phenomenon, a disturbing pattern of unexplained vanishings in remote areas that some believe is connected to cryptids like Sasquatch. Of course, if you start asking these questions too loudly, you might find yourself on the receiving end of some serious pushback. Reports of people being silenced, warned off their investigations, or even having evidence confiscated aren't just urban legend, they're out there. Is it all just paranoia? Maybe. But we can't ignore the sheer number of credible individuals who have come forward with stories of strange government involvement in Sasquatch research. And here's where we tie it all together. What if the government isn't just covering up Sasquatch to preserve the status quo? What if there's something more to these creatures? Something that could challenge our very understanding of humanity's place in the world? Some researchers suggest that Sasquatch might not be a mere flesh and blood creature, but something more supernatural or even biblical in nature. Which brings us to the next part of our discussion. Could Sasquatch and other cryptids be part of a larger spiritual battle, one that's been going on for centuries, right under our noses? Stick with me, folks, because we're about to dive deep into the biblical implications of cryptids like Sasquatch and the possible role they play in spiritual warfare. All right, let's take a step back from the government conspiracies for a moment and shift our gaze towards something that's even more ancient: biblical accounts and the possibility that cryptids like Sasquatch are part of a spiritual battle that's been waged for millennia. This is where things start to get really interesting, because if there's one thing we've learned from history, it's that sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. Now, for those of you who followed me on this journey for a while, you know I'm not just talking about Sasquatch as some kind of missing link or relic from prehistory. What if this creature, and others like it, have spiritual significance? What if they're tied to something far deeper, something that's been recorded in ancient texts and passed down through religious traditions? Let's look at the Bible for a moment. There are several references to giants, strange beings, and creatures that don't quite fit into the typical human or animal categories. One of the most famous references is to the Nephilim, giants mentioned in the book of Genesis. These beings were said to be the offspring of fallen angels and human women, a hybrid race that defied the natural order. Could Sasquatch be a remnant of this kind of hybridization, a creature that exists somewhere between the physical and the supernatural? Think about it. Sasquatch is often described as more than just an animal. Witnesses frequently report a sense of intelligence in its eyes, an almost human quality that sets it apart from other cryptids. And then there are the stories of Sasquatch appearing and disappearing as if it can move between dimensions or planes of existence. People have described seeing a Sasquatch one minute, only for it to vanish without a trace the next. Could this be evidence of a spiritual or interdimensional connection? And it's not just modern accounts that hint at this. Indigenous cultures across North America have long told stories of beings like Sasquatch, describing them as guardians of the forest, spirits, or even beings that walk between worlds. Some tribes view Sasquatch as protectors, while others warn of their darker, more sinister side. In many of these traditions, Sasquatch isn't just an animal, it's a spiritual entity with a purpose, sometimes benevolent, other times malevolent. And here's where the idea of spiritual warfare comes into play. If Sasquatch and other cryptids have ties to biblical or spiritual forces, what does that mean for us? Are we dealing with creatures that have been here since ancient times, playing a role in a larger, unseen conflict? Some researchers suggest that Sasquatch might be part of the same spiritual battle mentioned in the Bible, the ongoing war between good and evil, between light and darkness. Now, I know this might sound far-fetched, but stick with me here. We've seen countless examples in history of physical manifestations of spiritual battles, whether it's angels, demons, or other supernatural beings. What if Sasquatch is just another part of this puzzle? Some believe that the creature might be tied to the fallen angels, or Nephilim, and its elusive nature is part of its purpose in this spiritual war. It could be working to keep us distracted or confused, or even guarding sacred areas we're not meant to access. And then there's the possibility that Sasquatch could be a guardian of sorts, protecting certain areas from human intrusion, or maybe even standing as a sentry for something far more powerful. Some have speculated that locations with high Sasquatch activity might be near ancient portals or gateways to other dimensions. If that's the case, then what we're witnessing isn't just a rare creature. It's part of a much bigger spiritual phenomenon. This brings us back to the question, what is Sasquatch's true nature? Is it simply a relic of a forgotten time, or is it something far more profound? Are we looking at a physical creature, or are we staring into the face of something tied to a much larger spiritual reality? And more importantly, what does this mean for us, living in a world where the lines between the physical and the spiritual seem to blur more and more each day? As we ponder that, let's move on to something equally mysterious. What about the possibility that Sasquatch isn't just a passive player in this spiritual warfare, but an active participant in something that connects directly to us? Something that might impact not only our understanding of cryptids, but our understanding of humanity itself. All right, folks, here's where we start to pull back the layers and really dig into what all of this means. Not just for those of us who are fascinated by cryptids or the supernatural, but for humanity as a whole. Because, believe it or not, the existence of creatures like Sasquatch isn't just about whether or not we've got a giant, hairy ape man running around in the woods. It's about something much, much bigger. Let's ask the big question. Why does the idea of Sasquatch, even just the possibility of its existence, stir something deep within us? Why are we, as humans, so drawn to these kinds of mysteries? And why do we feel like they have something to tell us about ourselves? Some say that creatures like Sasquatch represent something primal, a connection to a time when humanity wasn't the dominant force on Earth, when we shared this planet with other beings, some of which might have been just as intelligent, just as capable. If Sasquatch is real, it could challenge the modern narrative that we, Homo sapiens, are the undisputed masters of the Earth. It would suggest that there are still things out there, things we don't fully understand, that have existed alongside us in the shadows. But what if it goes even deeper than that? What if Sasquatch and other cryptids represent more than just our ancient past? They could be a sign of something about our future. In a world where technology dominates, where we seem to be moving further away from the natural and the spiritual, these creatures remind us of something we might be losing, our connection to the unknown, to the wild places both outside and within ourselves. Think about it. Humanity has always been drawn to the mystery, to the unexplored. From the earliest days, when our ancestors looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there, to now, when we look into the forests and mountains and ask the same questions. We're wired to search for answers, but in a world where everything seems to be explained away by science or dismissed by skeptics, the existence of creatures like Sasquatch brings back that sense of wonder, of awe, of possibility. And maybe that's exactly why these creatures are so important. In a time when we think we have all the answers, they remind us that we don't. They remind us that there are still mysteries in the world, things that can't be quantified, measured, or easily dismissed. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what we need. But here's where it gets even more personal. For many people who've encountered Sasquatch or experienced something they can't explain, it's not just a fleeting moment of curiosity, it's life-changing. People report feeling a shift in the way they view the world, in how they understand their place in it. It forces them to rethink everything they thought they knew about reality, about what's possible, and about what might be out there. And that, my friends, is where the real impact of Sasquatch comes in. Whether you believe in Sasquatch or not, the fact remains that the search for the unknown, the search for truth, changes people. It opens their minds to new possibilities. It breaks down the barriers of conventional thinking. And it encourages us to keep asking questions. Because at the end of the day, isn't that what it's all about? It's about the journey, not just the destination. It's about the pursuit of knowledge, the willingness to step into the unknown, and the courage to face whatever we might find there, whether it's a cryptid in the woods, a government cover-up, or a spiritual battle that's been raging since the beginning of time. So, where does that leave us? What do we do with this information, with these stories, with these sightings? Do we dismiss them? Or do we open our minds to the possibility that there's more out there than we've been led to believe? That's a question only you can answer. But I'll leave you with this. The search for Sasquatch isn't just about proving whether or not a giant creature exists. It's about rediscovering that sense of wonder, that curiosity that makes us human. It's about embracing the mystery and allowing it to inspire us to keep searching, because who knows what else we might find along the way. All right, folks, that's it for today's Sasquatch Sunday. But before we wrap up, I've got just one more thing to leave you with. All right, folks, we've covered a lot of ground today, literally and figuratively, from the rugged wilderness of Colorado and the mysterious Sasquatch sightings, to the lesser-known Augerino, to the potential government cover-ups, and finally, to the deeper, spiritual connections that might be at play here. It's been a wild ride, and hopefully, we've planted a few seeds in your mind to ponder until next time. And listen, if today's episode got you thinking, or if you've had your own strange encounters, you know I want to hear about it. Don't be shy. Reach out and share your stories. After all, that's what Broadcasting Seeds is all about. Exploring the unknown together, one mystery at a time. Now, before you go, I've got a little favor to ask. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like share, and subscribe to the podcast. And hey, if you've got a minute, leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. It really helps more truth seekers like you find their way to the show. And who knows, maybe you'll inspire someone else to start asking questions and challenging the narrative. So, until next time, keep your eyes open, stay curious, and, as always, keep planting those seeds of knowledge. You never know what might take root. This is Bennett Tanton, signing off from Broadcasting Seeds. Stay safe out there, folks.
I got bad thoughts that make my mind scared. Hold me hostage and they don't fight fair. Who gon' pray for me and wipe all my tears? Who gon' save me if you not right here? Move this darkness and make my sight clear. Take me your way cause I don't like here. Ghosts of my past, they feeling the night air. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Drowning, I'm off the deep end. Apparitions of all my demons. All my thoughts are committing treason. All alone, who gon' hear me screaming? Manifestations of my fears. Regrets that stretched out for light years. Can almost touch the light, homie, it's right there. Body free but trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, don't let me drown.